All right, welcome to the Pig in a Pickle Krueg show. Larry Krueger with you on a Sunday morning. A little banged up because I got the cold hanging around, but I'm excited for our guest today. We're going to talk a little NFL draft with Eric Froton, who's a college football expert and NFL draft expert for NBC, and he wrote a great article about the quarterbacks for the upcoming draft, which I saw on Roto World, and he's with us on the Krueg show to talk about it. Hey, Eric, how are you? Good to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, Larry. Appreciate you having me on here. And as a fellow Californian like yourself, I want the audience to make sure they know we do get sick here too. We do get colds and flus. It's going around here in San Diego, so beware. Everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And we are brought to you by Pig in a Pickle. Check out the best barbecue in the Bay Area, Pig in a Pickle. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera, open 7 days a week in Corte Madera. They're open 5 days a week in Emeryville. We'll have more on that in a bit, but let's get right into the quarterbacks. And what do you think of the 49er quarterback room from afar? There's Brock Purdy, there's Trey Lance. What kind of grades did you have on these guys coming in out of college?
Yeah, with Trey Lance specifically, gosh, we remember it was 2 years ago. It feels so long in draft years, but it was only a couple seasons ago where there was, the big San Francisco expending a lot of draft capital to move up to that number 3 spot. Is it going to be Mac Jones? Is it going to be Trey Lance? This is the names being floated, but they ultimately went with the upside with Trey Lance, as we all know, and pertaining to how he relates and how he relates kind of to somebody in this draft class, I would equate his arm, the raw potential that we see, coming out of North Dakota State. We knew he was going to take a little bit of time. He wasn't just going to step right in and start. To kind of Anthony Richardson from Florida, from this class, particularly with the body, the tools, the arm. Is all there, but footwork, some work when it comes to shorter area passes, just that consistency. That's really, what we kind of saw from Richardson and from Lance. And unfortunately, the injury derailed him, and out comes the Bill Parcells mold of the QB. And I know that's something you're very familiar with, Larry, from your time in scouting, but I mean, Brock Purdy, it pretty much is the Bill Parcells QB. The 4-year star, he gets his degree. The wins, he's got over 40 wins. You just see how calm he is. He's battle tested. He went through everything. It's funny, when I talked to Purdy last year at the Combine, he specifically mentioned how I asked him, I was like, early in his career as a sophomore, they were much more of a vertical passing team, Iowa State, Matt Campbell, their head coach, and they would attack, a lot more deep, but he kind of backed away from that over the previous 2 seasons, and especially in 2021. And I asked him, I was like, how did you feel about going from being, having a pretty high, almost at 20%, I want to say 17-18% downfield passing rate when he was younger, as opposed to when his final year of college, when he really wants to show what he can do to the scouts, it was a much more conservative game plan. I think it only went down 11% of the time is the number that off the top of my number-addled head sticks out. And that was one of the lower usage rates downfield of most of the quarterbacks of his class. So he really, what he talked about was how they scaled back the game plan to accentuate Breece Hall and his 4.38 speed at 220 pounds. I mean, what are you going to do? You have a guy like that you can utilize in the Big 12. We have a veteran offensive line, all 5 guys coming back. And they were just, imposing their will on those Big 12 defensive lines. So, what his refrain is that he wishes he got to show more of that as he developed as a senior, as a junior, that he got to show a little bit as, when he was younger in his starting days. And that simply because of the game's flow, Matt Campbell is looking to win games. He's not, with all due respect to Brock Purdy, he's not looking to showcase his draft acumen. He is looking to win games. And when you got Breece Hall there, that's something that you just simply can't put him in the barn and not take him out for a test drive. You know what I mean? So it goes to show that ability to go downfield was there for Brock Purdy. It wasn't an opportunity for him to showcase it. So I'm excited to see what he can do when he comes back from injury.
Were you surprised by the success that he had?
I think everybody to some extent is surprised. There's a reason why he went 262, 263. Last guy taken in the draft, of course. I mean, it's like with Tom Brady. We wish we knew he wouldn't have gone this round. But you just saw the calm when things got crazy around him. Just the steady, battle tested. He's been in that situation before. That's the thing about experienced QBs that I tend to gravitate towards, which is just they've been there, they've had the reps, they've gone through the motions, and it just seems like those are the guys down the board where I feel like they succeed more, as opposed to, oh, well, this guy's only got 1 year, but it could happen. It seems like frequently the veterans, the leaders, the guys with the intangibles that can handle the pressure. It seems like they come out and they're the ones who excel. So even though I didn't, I wish I did see it to that extent. I certainly had. I did like Brock Purdy and what he did certainly in Iowa State, and had a lot of respect for him.
Brock obviously had a great year with the Niners and then hurt the elbow, now having surgery. Trey Lance really got hurt right away. We never really got a chance to see what he could do. They're both somewhat unknowns going into next year. The 49ers will be adding a quarterback to their room, and maybe in this draft. And the NFL is such a copycat league. I wonder, is there a quarterback that's going to benefit this year from the success that Brock had last year? Maybe somebody either who's undersized, somebody who's a 4-year starter, but maybe limited upside. Do you see a quarterback in this draft that NFL personnel guys is going to say, hey, this guy's similar to Brock, and that elevates his status?
Yeah, I think we saw him at the Senior Bowl. And in fact, this is a quarterback who isn't too far from from Levi Stadium up there in San Francisco. Fresno State quarterback Jake Haener measured out at just about 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. He's not big. He's not going to be imposing physically, but again, a 4-year starter who worked with one of the true offensive gurus of college football, Kalen DeBoer, who was the offensive coordinator there when he, early in his career, went over to Indiana, resurrected the Indiana University program with Michael Penix, who's now the starting quarterback at Washington, had an incredible season beating Oregon last year, where Kalen DeBoer then left in 2021, went back to Fresno State to be the head coach, where Jeff Tedford briefly retired, and just absolutely double-digit win season. Jake Haener throws for over 4,000 yards. He was simply incredible. Jalen Moreno-Cropper, everybody. That was Ronnie Rivers was there at the time, undersized back, the split time with Jordan Mims. So like that whole Fresno State program and where he came from, working with such a quarterback guru who developed him. You see that the veteran leadership, 4-year starter, again, successful, double-digit wins each of the past 2 seasons. Kalen DeBoer leaves in 2022. Tedford comes back. Doesn't matter. The culture's still there. So with group of 5 quarterbacks, I like to look at culture and history of these coaching staffs and how they develop players. And they're really, when it comes to Fresno State, it comes to Kalen DeBoer, it comes to Jeff Tedford. Obviously Devontae Adams went to Fresno State. Obviously the Carr brothers went to Fresno State. There's a rich legacy of being one of the best group of 5 programs for developing talent. And I think, with his showing at the Senior Bowl, Jake Haener doesn't have the biggest arm, right? But he makes his reads. Again, good footwork, doesn't click, will climb the pocket, resets outside of structure, but can still run. He's got that sort of moxie and the ability to create off platform. So, the big knock on him is similar to Bryce Young, not having the size, not being particularly big, and not having the biggest arm. But when it comes to what he was able to do and how he succeeded against some of the best competition, look, 108 guys got last year got drafted, who went to the Senior Bowl. That was about, I believe, 82% of the players who attended there. He was at the Senior Bowl. He's beating NFL caliber players and succeeding against them, in addition to doing very well at the G5 level and succeeding there. I think that he has those sort of intangibles to have a Brock Purdy type effect and maybe a little rise in the draft.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call. He maybe even has a Hayner, maybe even has a little bit better arm than Brock. I mean, I love the zip that I saw at the Senior Bowl. We got one in the chat that's kind of interesting. He says, Lee Ving, I love that name. He says, would Trey be the number one pick in this draft? Lack of reps and injuries included. If Trey Lance were in this draft, based on everything you know, where would you have him slotted?
No, he would not be the number one. And that's not even really a knock on Trey Lance. Just you got to remember when he's coming out, he's coming out of the FCS. He's coming out of North Dakota State. He wasn't even one of the 131 D1A teams that he's competing against. So, like, there's still that. How will he handle not just a rise in level of competition in the NFL, but like we haven't even seen him against really talented P5 competition. So that certainly is working against him. And I think, to expand on it a little more, I think we do have a pretty good comp in this class for, Trey, which is Anthony Richardson. I see a lot of similarities, 6'4", 235. You see Anthony Richardson off platform where he has a huge arm. You see him unleashing 40-yard downfield passes on a dime while rolling on almost a dead sprint out to the right. It's tougher to do rolling left as a right-handed quarterback. But you see him make those throws, and, it's there. That particular, potential is present. I think you saw a lot of that with Lance, too, his big arm. So I do think we see that. But, with Richardson, we did see him in the SEC, but we only had 18 games with which to do an eval of him. The other signal callers who were at the top there, I would say, of the top five, with Hendon Hooker, very seasoned. We know what we're getting out of him. He's 25 years old. Will Levis will be 24. Bryce Young, at the biggest stage at Alabama, we've seen him. And that same goes for CJ Stroud. So I think with having two established signal callers in Young and Stroud that we've seen succeed on the highest level, we've seen especially with Stroud, where there was a little bit of question about his mobility, if he would, be able to run and break the pocket and scramble, which he had been kind of averse to do. We saw him do everything you need against Georgia and answer those questions. So I couldn't in good conscience put Trey Lance above Stroud and Young, but I would put him on that same sort of a plane with Anthony Richardson in terms of very toolsy developmental quarterbacks that are enticing.
Anthony Richardson may even be faster, huh? I mean, Richardson's really explosive. I saw him earlier this year in a couple games, and I thought, wow, I mean, this guy's big and fast and strong-armed, and where Trey's got mobility, but I don't know that he's got Richardson kind of speed. Just wondering if we went back to that 2021 draft that had Lawrence go 1, Zach Wilson 2, the 49ers took Trey Lance 3rd, Justin Fields went 11, I think, in that draft. Mac Jones went 15, Davis Mills, I think, went round 2. How did you have the quarterbacks ranked in that draft, if you remember?
Yeah, I had it as, obviously, Trevor Lawrence. He's a generational prospect, and I don't think anybody's gonna, have any qualms with him being the top guy. But then I had Justin Fields as my 2, and then I had Trey Lance as my 3, Mac Jones my 4, and Zach Wilson is my 5. I'm a New England Patriots guy too, so I was like the intangibles of Jones. You see how he is absolutely possessed with with studying, with doing everything he needs to do in order to be, a quality, dependable starting quarterback in the NFL. So I like that aspect of him, obviously, and, the pedigree and doing it on the big stage. But I even despite that, I still hold. I still think that I'd rather have. I still think he is the number 3 because we don't know yet, and he does have those tools. And I think there's enough questions about whether Mac Jones really has the physical skills and the total package to be able to be an upper echelon level quarterback. That I think there's still time for Lance because he's so young, coming out too, and he does have time. We haven't seen him. I would still probably put him in that 3 spot. I think there still is that potential there. So I would. It just depends on, hey, what does San Francisco think?
Exactly. Beauty in the eye of the beholder. It's funny. We get this one from Basmian, who says, draft another quarterback that scores high on the cognition test, which Brock did. It's funny. Brock had the 1-5-5 10-yard split, and I don't think too many people looked at that. And then if you watched him this year, his ability to escape the rush was impressive. And then you look at that 10-yard split, and it's not that different than Tyreek Hill. And it's a really great time for a quarterback. To me, Brian Billick one time said to me, he said, the hardest thing to evaluate in the NFL is the quarterback versus what's going on around the quarterback, which is a great point. Everybody points to something different. Some people want to see career starts. Some people want to see completion percentage. A lot of it is feel. The truth be told, many of us scouts don't know what exactly we're looking for. We can't really define it. We have to see it first. That all being said, what traits do you point to, Eric, when you're scouting the quarterbacks as the vital traits, the most important ones?
I think piggybacking on Coach Billick, the ability to handle pressure, stand tall, and feel what's happening around you. Like having that sixth sense of just feeling everything and being calm and standing and delivering a strike while under pressure. I think that ability is just innate to quarterback play, and there's no way. And that was kind of going back to CJ Stroud, what people had a little bit of concerns about, because like he has a brick wall in front of him. He's rarely rushed. How do we know what he's going to do when he's not just standing back there and comfortably surveying the field and distributing to the great wide receivers of their generation? Wilson, Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, Jackson Smith and Jigba. 5 absolute first-round caliber talents. How do you parse through that? And I really do think that, like you said, as stated, the ability to handle pressure, and then the ability to off-platform, outside of structure, instead of just tucking the ball down and running at the first sign of pressure, being able to reset when you get outside of that pocket, recalibrate, see the field, and be able to win when you're in that situation off platform, because things are going to break down. You're going to have to be able to move. You can't be a statue inside the pocket, which is something that does really concern me about Tanner McKee, from this class. But I do think that there's an element of mobility every quarterback has to have, and it ties into just pocket navigation, feeling the pressure, and delivering.
Let's talk about this class. I thought I stumbled onto your scouting combine, post combine quarterback rankings article on rotoworld.com, and I loved it. I thought you did a great job. I just want, and then I saw your contact there at the bottom, and I said, all right, we got to try to see if we can get Eric on the show. You have Bryce Young as your QB1. He's awfully small. I don't know if he's 6 feet tall. I don't know if he's 200 pounds. But I've heard Daniel Jeremiah compare him to Aaron Rodgers. I always have, you talk about evaluating quarterbacks. It's difficult to evaluate quarterbacks anyway. It's even more difficult in my mind to evaluate quarterbacks on truly dominant teams. How do you, give me your grade on Bryce Young, what you see with Young as he tries to progress to the next level? I don't know if there's a comp for him, because he's diminutive, but man, he's been really electric.
Yeah, there's no doubt in terms of if you watch his film and just the his body of work at Alabama and through these last 2 years where he's been starting. I mean, he came out of high school as a 5-star blue chip, no doubt consensus 5-star elite quarterback prospect. So even though he isn't, the stature of the aforementioned Trevor Lawrence, look, it isn't like he didn't have this talent. It's not like we didn't see it at a young age from an evaluation standpoint. Like he did this from at a very young age. He didn't just come on the scene. All right. So this was a, rite of passage. It was a process bringing him here. And it's not like he's coming out of nowhere. Right. That being said, I did interview him at the Elite 11 at Redondo Beach High School this summer. I stood face to face. I'm 6'2.5", 205 pounds. And I stood face to face with him. And I didn't feel like I'm looking at somebody who is going to be, absolutely destroyed right out of the gate in the NFL. Is he prototypical size? No, of course. Was Drew Brees? No. And I think in today's day and age where the ability to deliver accurate strikes, to be able to read defenses, he can definitely do that. You see him going through the progressions. You see his creativity. He comes from different arm angles as well. Just in terms of the complete package, he's there. And it goes to obviously pressure as well. And that's what I talked about being a real important factor for me. And he was second nationally in terms of his PFF pressure grade in this class, with the number one being Clayton Tune for Houston, who is a guy I really love and I had all over my college fantasy football teams over the past couple of years. So, third down situations as well. He's number one overall in terms of being able to hit the tight windows when teams know you're passing. That's another thing. I really like seeing how quarterbacks perform on third downs, because having good play action numbers, having your things disguised by play action is one thing, but when the other team knows that you're dropping back, you have to pass, you're going to be throwing, they're coming and bringing heat, off the edge and up the middle. I want to see quarterbacks perform in those circumstances, and he does time after time. So even though I really feel like the only thing you can really say about him that's a real knock outside of, little things is just his size. And if that's all you really have, I didn't see him as being, 5'6" or anything. He's still around that 5'11" to 6 foot range. And at 21 and a half years old, I do think that there's room for him to put on 10 pounds. I mean, how much is up for debate, but I do think that he does have the ability to be able to sustain, the rigors of an NFL season. He's not somebody who just wantonly runs either. He's very selective about picking his spots there. So he's smart about when he takes his chances. And I just wish that NBC, with the video accompanying that article, didn't put Matthew Berry talking about how small Bryce Young was. I did my article, so I was like, yeah. What? That's the video we pick, guys? Oh, okay, fair enough. But
here's my question. Can Bryce Young in the NFL with the wider hash marks throw the deep out with zip and get it there? That's my, I guess, does he have enough arm strength to stand there in the pocket and make that hard deep out throw, or can he throw the deep cut patterns, the 18 to 22 yard ins and outs? That would be my big concern. Where are you with the requisite arm strength? Does he have it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a howitzer, obviously. There's certain limitations unless you're, you don't see a lot of guys in Major League Baseball that are 5'11", 195 pounds, like the ballpark we're talking about, that are throwing 98 miles an hour. Pedro Martinez was one of a kind. It's Pedro, and then there aren't a lot of guys that are pretty much out there doing that. So, there are certain just natural limitations you're going to have. But I think he's got plenty of juice to be able to make throws he needs to. Like you said, the 20-yard field side out, which is a real test of any quarterback at the NFL level. Are you going to be able to beat an NFL cornerback to that field side downfield? And that's something where we will have to watch. But I think he can do it. And this season, too, with Bryce, speaking of the all-time great wide receiver cores, he lost a lot of talent to that 2021 draft, as we saw. Jameson Williams, obviously, and then you get to John Mechie. Unfortunately, he had cancer and didn't play much for Houston, but he was an early third-round selection as well. So, and then Slade Bolden, a nice, quality, dependable slot receiver. It all worked nicely together, that whole thing. And then he comes in this year, and it's a whole new group. You got Jermaine Burton transferring in from Georgia. He's kind of more of a deep threat. Is it, not a complete receiver, not somebody who can work the inside the way that Mechie did, who was working the underneaths. And then Jameson Williams just taking the top off, creating separation both with the ball in the air, off the break, and with the ball in his hands, at will at 6'3", 200 pounds. It's like, you got Corey Brooks now. He doesn't have that step. He's big, and he made some nice plays with some drops, and he doesn't have the high-end gear you saw from Jameson Williams. And on the other side, like you said, Jermaine, you're breaking in like 5 new highly touted freshmen outside of those 2 guys who haven't proven themselves yet at in the SEC. A lot of moving parts. Really was a challenge for Bryce Young this year, and that's why you didn't see Death Star Bama. So I do think that has to be, factored into his grade. If you look at his 2021 stuff a little more, you see that he was dialing it downfield. You just had receivers getting more separation.
Let's move on to CJ Stroud. And Stroud's got unlike Bryce Young, CJ Stroud's got size. My question with him is, man, I thought those Buckeye wide receivers were all stars. And it's hard to evaluate, Stroud against, having all these incredible receivers. But then I saw him against Georgia in the national semi, and I thought, wow, this guy looked great. And maybe he won me over a little bit there. How do you feel about CJ Stroud? What do you see as his strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, well, as you stated, that Georgia game was just a perfect
it's a clinic
coming together of what we'd all hoped we'd see out of CJ Stroud. I touched on it a little bit earlier, simply that the questions isn't so much, can he distribute? Can he do that? Can he, throw the ball to these all worlds? And if you had those 5 guys on an NFL wide receiver core, like what? Oh my God, what are you going to do against that? That's just a perfect blend of everything you could possibly ask for. So, separating that out to, throwing to mere mortals against, superstar NFL caliber cornerbacks, what does that look like? So you got to remember, the reason why we have the luxury of saying what does he look like without these players? What does he look like when he doesn't have the kind of time and ability to go through his reads casually because he's not getting pressured? Well, it's a luxury because what he did when he was in college, it's unassailable. 5th nationally in close and late situations with a 70% completion rate, down the stretch where you have to execute and teams are expecting you to throw and they have to execute. That's incredible bellwether. Also, downfield passing, which is, what we're looking for. I want to see, can you go and stretch the field, as you talked about with Bryce Young, and undoubtedly Stroud, completed 50 passes of 20 or more yards over the last 2 seasons. Second nationally, only Caleb Williams hit more, in terms of big play rate. So this is when you put those things together with what we saw against Georgia, with him making plays off structure, with him being able to scramble and not just scramble, down the stretch with 3 minutes left, and you have to get a first down, and he's he's weaving. You know, he didn't just slide down. He went and he even made a couple extra moves where he beat a linebacker to get another 12 yards and put them in a field goal range, which ultimately Noah Ruggles missed. But I do feel like, you know, what we needed to see out of Stroud, we saw, and that I'm comfortable with selecting him as the second quarterback off the board. If if somebody says, hey, maybe one of the teams says that we don't think that Bryce Young can hold up to the rigors of the NFL, well, then CJ Stroud's there for you too.
Will Levis is interesting. I watched him throw the ball the other day, and I thought, wow, look at this guy throwing the ball. But then you look at, the career that he had at Kentucky, and he's played with different coordinators. This year he played behind a poor offensive line. He takes a lot of sacks. He can throw the deep ball, and he's a little bit older, more experienced. He's 24. Where are you with Will Levis? I think there'll be people that have Levis literally at the top of their board. And then there'll be those who have him quite a bit down from the top two based on the turnovers and the inconsistent play at Kentucky. Where do you weigh in on Levis? He's kind of love him, hate him, the people that I'm talking to.
Oh yeah, I would say in terms of the top QBs, he's the most polarizing, where if you're like myself and you watch the games every single Saturday, and I try to get tape on these guys because I'm projecting player performance in real time. I don't have the luxury of just going back and looking at, here's a full season, here's what I think. I'm doing everything in real time in terms of my player projections. So watching him in real time, it wasn't pretty this season.
Right.
Like it wasn't all 7-13 big time throw to turnover worthy play rate. I mean, that's horrible. That's objectively terrible. You look in terms of how you mentioned the offensive line, where they lost some really important pieces from 2021 to 2022, not the least of which is, in addition to that, their offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, who came in for 1 year and really took Will Levis under his wing and called a game that was suited to his strengths as a passer. Whereas opposed, he leaves, goes back to the Rams where he had been an assistant, goes back there as a QB coach, and Rick Scangarello from
49ers.
The 49ers takes over, and let's just say it didn't go so well. Mr. Scangarello running the show
right.
was not quite the same effect. So the game's being called not good. It was not well game planned. You're talking about a pro guy who came down to college, being an offensive coordinator for the first time, and just being over his head, frankly, in the SEC with Kentucky, dealing with the elite defenses. He was unsummarily jettisoned after the season. It will be one and done at offensive coordinator for Mr. Scangarello. In comes, they brought back Liam Cohen in a prodigal return because they saw the writing on the wall at Kentucky. But that being said, for Mr. Levis, look, and when he was at Penn State, he battled Sean Clifford, who, if you've ever spoken to a Penn State faithful and you've talked to them about Sean Clifford, they will give you a very stern and succinct player analysis and evaluation of Sean Clifford, which will amount to this: get him off my team, bring in Drew Allar,
turnover machine,
ready to turn the page here. Just you're not going to get much downfield, and what's tough is their offensive coordinator there is Mike Yurcich, who was the OC at Oklahoma State under Mike Gundy for several years, and they were lethal downfield with Yurcich. They love to stretch defenses vertically, but you didn't see as much of that, from Penn State in large part because you have Sean Clifford there. That's tough, and you still had Jahan Dotson, where, man, he was throwing it up. It didn't even matter when you throw into Jahan Dotson. But the point being is, look, Will Levis got beat out by Sean Clifford and was the running quarterback alternative when he was there, where you come in for the short yardage, Blake Bell, Belldozer type packages, and in short yardage, within the 5. Like, that's what they brought him in for. He wasn't a passer at Penn State. He got beat out by Sean Clifford with his passing acumen. So he goes over to Kentucky, has a nice 2021, good, promising. It's obvious that he's most comfortable over the middle, where he fits some passes into very tight windows. I mean, I know you probably saw some of that where you're watching, where it's like big arm, big balls on him too. Like, he is not afraid to take chances, which, as discussed, led to a pretty prolific interception rate, where he actually had, over the past 2 years, the highest interception rate of any Power 5 quarterback, with, the qualifying amount of passes, 26.5 pass attempts per interception, worst in the country. And a lot of that has to do with trying to make the big throw as opposed to being patient, taking what's available to you, in the flats, stuff that, the drag routes, stuff like that, which is something that when I was doing my eval of him, in prior to this column, you would see happen, more than just once, where there are layups that he could take as opposed to the 3-pointers, but he wants to go with the big ones. That's something in terms of he'll definitely need to have coached out. He'll need to settle down in that respect and just have a more calm approach. That being said, he's going to be 24 by the time, camps roll around. And I see the same kind of footwork issues that I see with Anthony Richardson, who's 21, and he's a 24-year-old QB. So that the polish and, the nice throwing from stable base. And that's where you see for both him and Richardson on the short passes, specifically with Levis, the comeback routes to the pylon, the front pylon of the end zone. I saw him make 5 throws on receivers, Barry and Brown and Wan'Dale Robinson, wide open at that front pylon, and he's shorting those passes. It has to do with footwork. So that's a concern that I have with him, where at 24 years old, I see the feet clicking, and I see, the lack of stable base. I see him kind of, throwing upright on his toes as opposed to more balance. And that's something where, with all things being equal, which I think is pretty close with Levis and Richardson, you look at Richardson, hey, he can run, check that box fast at 235.
Yeah.
Not particularly, like, he's not going to break you down and give you the foot fire, but you let him get out there and let him weave and just allow him to let his hips do the work for him. And he is dangerous downfield, no doubt. And it's just it's something that Levis just doesn't possess. And you throw on the age, all those things, I have to go with Anthony Richardson over Levis. And frankly, I want to see, I'm excited to see Levis throw in person. I haven't seen him in person. I've seen a few of these guys, already, but I want to see him throw at the combine. And I'm real close to moving Hendon Hooker ahead of him, just based on, the leadership qualities I've seen from Hooker. Again, his footwork and his mechanics are much better. Like, he's 25, so it should be, but like, where he is developmentally, when I watch him and I see, him, how he's, just approaching the position, I just think it's so much more advanced than where Levis is right now. And that's a problem.
Yeah. How many of these guys go in round 1? Because I think Richardson's probably going in the top 20 based on his athletic measurables.
Yeah. Well, I mean, based on what we're seeing, Levis, where he's being mocked in that top 10 everywhere, which, look, I get it. You see him throwing against air and not having to make decisions and not needing to process. And you say, okay, ball of clay. Look at this guy. Look at this arm. If we can harness it, and I get it. And it's the same thing as, Lance and that sort of thing. So I understand that. But, if he is being considered in many circles a lock top 10 pick, then I can't see how why wouldn't a team that's a little further down the trough, who might not have the same draft capital, wants a QB? We've seen some, I think, objectively mediocre to substandard QB play out of many QB rooms, at least the bottom third of teams in the league, where Anthony Richardson, it's going to be 2 years. You're going to be working with him. System and who brings him is going to be important. You want to have a QB guru who can it's his baby. Here, Anthony Richardson, he's yours. You take him, and we want to see a QB guru working with that guy. So I'm confident he goes in the first round. If Will Levis is top 10, why wouldn't you take Anthony Richardson in the first round? Because he's not Malik Willis at 6 foot 210, who led the league in sacks and scrambles each of the final 2 years of his NFL career. It's a different ball game here.
We got one in the chat from Ricky who says, Larry, I'm pounding the table for Hendon Hooker. We should spend a third and redshirt him because of the ACL injury. We, of course, as I've referenced to you before the show, is the 49ers. That's the default on this show. But, Hooker's interesting. 6'4", 220. He's 25. He's coming off an ACL tear late in the year. So as far as his availability this year, that's kind of up in the air. And he was sacked an awful lot late in games. And he played with some phenomenal receivers. To me, this is an uncomfortable evaluation because the production's there. But how much of it is these incredible receivers? How much of it was Hooker? He did have some turnovers at the end of games or he did have some sacks where he took them at the end of games where I thought, wow, that you got to throw that ball away. How is Hooker a late first? Is he an early second? Is he a third? The injury, how does that impact things? Is he going to work out before the combine, or is he still hurt?
In terms of the combine, I don't think he's working out. He just tore his ACL, in December. In late November. So yeah, that'd be just an absolutely ridiculous recovery. But I know from what I understand, he will be at the combine to interview and do stuff like that, and just be seen in it. He's there. Maybe he's back by the time the season rolls around. That is in play for an ACL injury, and I guess he's walking around. He's getting there. But in terms of where I value him, considering the ACL, consider all that, I think he'll probably end up in the late second. I feel like if Davis Mills is late second, I believe early third. It was right at that 2-3, turn with Mills and Trask and Kellen Mond from Texas A&M, which that was absolutely shocking. He was a third round pick, but if guys of that caliber are getting taken in the that very, very, very beginning of the third round, late second, where the teams that missed out, a QB the first time around, I think somebody gets an itch in the late second and either trades up or somebody takes him in the late to very early day 3 range. Not day 3, round 2, round 3 range. As Ricky Queen was kind of pointing out, I like him a lot too. I think that's a great deal. God, you get him in the third round, Ricky. I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. Give me Hendon Hooker in the third round. Yeah. No problem. He'll still be able to. He'll be throwing by the time camp rolls around. I would think at least he'll be throwing. He'll have time to sit behind, Purdy, however that works. And then, as you've seen, kind of with the Patriots, in their past with Matt Castle, obviously Jimmy. I don't need to tell you about Jimmy G. That sort of a thing where they've taken quarterbacks on him, developed them, and then, breaking case of glass, Matt Castle goes 10-6 when Tom Brady gets hurt that one year. And then, Brady, there was the suspensions for Deflategate, and he started a couple of games, Jimmy. So, that sort of a model, it's never a bad idea to have a talented QB that you feel like if something goes wrong, he can come in and perform. Because, look, concussions, QBs are getting hit. You look at with Tua, they had Skylar Thompson who had to come in. You don't know what's going to happen. It's not the NBA. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to get 70 games out of these guys and just know it. It's gladiators. It's 300-pound men who are the freakiest human beings on earth trying to inflict harm upon these guys. It's always good to have a second and third option. And my gosh, guys, if you could get Hendon Hooker in the third round, where you guys will be drafting because you made the playoffs back in the third round, it's a jackpot scenario. I don't think they'll be there though.
We like a lot of the same guys on the back end of these quarterbacks. One guy that you wrote about, I used to do the Stanford pregame, so I've seen a lot of Tanner McKee, and McKee's interesting. I mean, he's really accurate, and he's 6'6", and he's about 225. And he played in a slow-paced offense, run the ball. His stats don't look like they should. But if you're just looking for a tall, accurate pocket passer who, the ball comes out on time and it comes out with some accuracy and some zip, you could do worse than Tanner McKee. He's not going to run away from anybody, but and I question his durability, how many hits he can really take. But I really like what I see of him as a thrower. What do you think of McKee?
And McKee is another guy. I mean, 6'6", 230 pounds build. I mean, there is a prototype for a reason. So he checks those boxes absolutely in spades. But again, he's a statue. He's going to be a Drew Bledsoe type where you're not going to be running any RPOs or you're not going to be rolling him out a lot to take advantage of his mobility because there isn't any. So that's a problem. And that led to, the most second half sacks of any quarterback in the entire nation over the past 2 years. And, to be fair to McKee, David Shaw, as the Bay Area faithful, I'm sure many of you will know, as you've watched over the past couple of years, there was, from the people I know at Stanford in and around that program, out there was definitely some rumblings where it was like, hey, all right, what are we doing here? Around 2021,
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, he had. Listen, there was a time when David Shaw, hey, he had a nice little run when he first came in there with some, for a few years, but that time passed. Gave him another, 2021 wasn't so great. Gave him 2022 still, and it got worse. I think pretty, objectively. And it's so strange because Michael Wilson went and lit up the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, you look great.
Absolutely, you look great, and traits physically, he's probably gonna be in the right around 4.5. If he gets under 4.5, it'd be unreal. But he was injured a lot, in his defense. But then also Elijah Higgins is out there. I was at the Senior Bowl. I got to see Elijah Higgins up close and personal for 4 days, and he is a large physical specimen. Yeah, there it is.
Well, and then they had Urasek, the undergrad tight end, who's really good. I mean, he had some weapons.
Absolutely had weapons. But that, like I said, slow in terms of pacing. They were one of the 20th slowest paced teams in the country. It wasn't exactly a spread air raid. It wasn't stressing the defense very much with the pass. Just kind of a very traditional stock and trade pro style offense. Frankly, you don't see a lot of in college because they're trying to open up the field as opposed to constrict it, and just handing it off to EJ Smith to then subsequently gets injured, and then with no EJ Smith, now where are we? It was a tough season, obviously, over there for Stanford, but that does have to be factored in. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They weren't even trying to go downfield. So for perspective, in terms of explosiveness, he has all those talented players we just mentioned out here. Austin Jones previously, before he went to USC. And still with that, just 8 of his 713 pass attempts since 2021. That's 2 full years. Just 8 of those 713 attempts went for 40-plus yards. That was the 5th lowest mark in the entire FBS. That's 131 teams, all right, for Tanner McKee. So I do think there's chicken and the egg argument to be made here in that sense. But it's got to go a little both ways. I mean, I understand that they weren't it was certainly a risk-averse offense that wasn't looking to take chances and protect a defense that got progressively worse as well, but how much of that is Tanner McKee not being able to feel the rush, not being able to navigate the pocket. He doesn't have great feet anyways. He's not quick anyway. So those are things that are working against McKee. He's going to be drafted. I mean, that his size and dimensions and arm talent, just the raw skill. Again, much like Bryce Young, he was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. He was a top 3 QB. He's sharp. He's at Stanford, so those are intangibles that NFL teams like. They like smart, big arm QBs, that can unleash a rocket. And that's a guy they can work with.
He's NFL. He may be NFL backup, but he's definitely an NFL stature. Hey, before we let you go, let's get to day 3 because the 49ers have 3 picks right at the end of the 3rd round. They got a slew of picks on day 3. If you ask me, where do they go for a quarterback? It's probably on day 3. And you and I think, like some of the same guys. I really like Jay Kaner quite a bit. Max Duggan had a big year for Sonny Dykes. A lot of people argue for Stetson Bennett. I'm not really a Stetson Bennett guy. A lot of people here are saying, how about Dorian Thompson-Robinson? To me, he's very up and down. I've had people tell me that Aiden O'Connell from Purdue is going to be a really good quarterback. I kind of like what I saw in the All-Star game from Malik Cunningham as far as the way he threw, the way he ran, how solid he is. Adrian Martinez, the Nebraska transfer, is at K-State. And he had a pretty, didn't have a great year at K-State, but Martinez is an interesting guy, 6'3", 225. But the guy that I really like is a guy that I know you like as well, and that's Clayton Tune from University of Houston. And if you see him, he's pretty solidly built, and he's really athletic, really bouncy. I liked what I saw from him. I think, he's athletic. He's experienced. He's a plus athlete. He can really drive the football. I like this kid. I mean, if the 49ers are really looking for a 3rd quarterback to invest in behind Brock Purdy, behind Trey Lance, I would use one of those late 3rd round picks on Clayton Tune out of Houston. I know you like him as well. Tell me about Tune and what you like.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it isn't Jake Haener who's the Brock Purdy of this class, I feel like it's Clayton Tune. He's my guy, and you got to remember, he's a 5-year starter. Thank you, pandemic season, when it comes to that. But over there at Houston. So again, much like Brock Purdy, just a grizzled, battle-tested guy, and just having watched him, having had him on multiple of my college fantasy and campus to Canton teams. I've got him in campus to Canton as well. I'm excited for, what he can do at the next level, as stated. And reason why is when you look at some of those vital metrics that I discussed, things that I look at that are, performance harbingers for success, Clayton Tune has quite a few of them. As we discussed, what does a quarterback do in non-play action situations, which, play action can mask some deficiencies? It's, sucking up linebackers. So you're having that nice, clean, open shot, 10 yards, crossing from that slot receiver, and you can just hit him in stride. And it can mask some deficiencies. What do quarterbacks do when they don't have that crutch? Well, Clayton Tune, non-play action situations, 2nd in the FBS in terms of his passing grade in non-play action situations. Number 1, North Carolina's Drake May, who you will see, mark my words, top 5 QB next year. It's Caleb Williams and it's Drake May. Those are the guys. Start watching them now. Get ready. Not like the San Francisco people are going to have to worry about that. You guys are in good shape with QBs. But, Drake May, to play second fiddle to Drake May in the entire, out of all of college in non-play action situations, you're good. You can play. As well as that, close. When the game's close, when you have to make the throws, you know what I mean? When the defense knows it's do or die, we have to move the ball, 2-minute drill time, close and late situations. Clayton Tune, again, 180.5 passer rating in those situations. That's, astronomical, sky high, of course, to go with 9 of his 71 pass attempts in those crucial circumstances going for touchdowns. That's the 7th best rate nationally in those circumstances. So you put it in terms of executing. When the game is on the line, he's there. Ice water in his veins, and then athletically too. Really underrated. People don't realize what kind of an athlete Clayton Tune was. He ran a 4.5 in high school. You saw him when very opportunistic. When you need to run, he's quick. His feet are great. Can navigate the pocket. Like, I have no problem with any of his mobility related skills. I think he's going to be great. 2021, he pulled a hamstring in like the second game of the year, and he didn't run at all for the rest of it. He still played. He still played QB. He just taped it up, as much as you can possibly do it, and just gutted it out until late in the season where he was able to kind of pull it off. But 22, you see him, he did more because he didn't have that kind of hang up. And, night and day difference. Lastly, his arm. At the Senior Bowl, they have a radar gun on everybody throwing. He hit 76.8 miles per hour on the Senior Bowl gun. That was the highest of all quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl. And it was by a couple miles per hour, too. It was pretty comfortably. I think it was him and Tyler Badgett, who were the top two there. So when it comes to velocity, it comes to handling pressure, it comes to just overall experience, know-how, like all those sort of intangibles of the Bill Parcells QB that you want to see, Clayton Tune has, and then you throw on the athleticism on top of it. I really think that he could be somebody that down the board, you might even be able to wait until your 4th round pick too, which is the beauty of Tune, being a G5 Houston QB and a little bit on the older side, maybe you could wait and get him down the board, and that'd be a very nice developmental QB that like Jimmy G, like Castle, you could see them go and turn around and flip if Brock Purdy is rock solid like he looked.
Kyle's system is run heavy. He requires his quarterbacks to make, some efficient throws within structure. I just think Tune's a great fit. I think arm strength, foot speed, durability, where he'll go in the draft. How do you see him as a fit for Kyle's offense?
Sure. I mean, when it comes to the rhythmic passing, like you said, they don't take a lot of chances there. Shanahan doesn't like to run. He wants to make sure that the reads are right. I like Clayton Tune. I think somebody's going to get a quarterback that, from a developmental perspective, has a lot of the traits that you want from any organization that you're looking for in a QB. And he's 6'2", 216 pounds too. They check, 6'2" and a quarter. So it's not like he's small either. He's got all those intangibles. He worked with Nathaniel Dell, Tank Dell, who was another guy who popped on the Senior Bowl. But if you watch, Dell's tape, man, Tune is putting him in good position. He's hitting him in stride on those quick slants that allow him at 5'8", 163 to do that jitterbug sort of dance that he does and just blow away people in the open field, So, and that goes for hitting him in stride and hit him in the catch pocket, but then also downfield too with Dell. I mean, he is fast. So, you have to be able to get him and match his speed downfield and hit him in stride, because you don't want to underthrow him and give the cornerback a chance to catch up, because he's going to have a step, probably two. Did a great job of getting that, really driving it downfield to hit Dell, because it can be tough. You can underthrow that guy. He did a hell of a job with that too. So I think that, what you see from him on tape and what his physical attributes are, the being battle tested, being experienced, I think he can do it.
Man, we love talking ball with you. We'll let you go, but a couple in the chat that are interesting. Somebody's asking, what about Jaron Hall out of BYU? We got another guy asking about Michael Penix. Penix is the UW guy who's got just a howitzer. I saw him on a Friday night game where it was super windy, and this guy's arm strength, I mean, he's just ripping it right through the wind. It was amazing. Penix he's got a Mahomes, Joe Flacco, kind of a crazy arm strength, but he's next year. What do you think of Jaron Hall from BYU? Do you have a quick thought on Hall before we say goodbye?
Yeah, well, speaking of Jaron Hall, in arm strength, former Major League Baseball draftee, absolutely. And when it comes to driving the ball downfield, that's Jaron Hall, 58% adjusted completion rate on passes 20 plus yards downfield. That's what we all want to see. Now, he's not big. He's 6'1", 205 is what he's billed, what he came in at. I believe that's right around where he checked in at the Senior Bowl too. But when 25 years old, because he's a BYU kid, so they're going to do the mission. They're going to be a little bit older, but conversely to Will Levis, a 46-20 career, big time throw, 2 turnover worthy play rate. So like he will test the coverage. He will go and make that throws downfield. So even though he's smaller, he's not that. He doesn't have the stature, the prototype. He's got the arm, so it's when you have that sort of the ability to throw with that velocity, it does kind of make up for some of the size deficiency I think that I see. But in terms of, what he did among his peers at BYU, you want to be careful a little bit because we saw what happened with Zach Wilson. Right. Man, everybody fell for him in 2020 because of the pandemic year and all the schedules were different. They were instead of playing a, somewhat 50-50 schedule that year of Power 5 and group of 5 opponents, he played all group of 5 teams. So he wasn't playing against the top guys,
and he had a veteran O-line. He had a veteran O-line. The NFL is all about making plays within a muddy pocket. His pocket was never muddy.
Exactly.
It was a tough event. I personally like him and see some upside. If the Jets want to kick him to the curb, I'd give him another shot because I think there's a lot of talent there. But there's also a lot of development and a lot of reps that are going to be needed, and he's not ready to play, in my opinion.
He's not. And again, like it's while he's good in terms of he tests windows. He's good in that respect, and where his arm strength comes into play, he has a tendency to kind of rock a little bit. Is what you say is when a QB he's dropping back, and he'll kind of tilt when he throws downfield as opposed to stand strong and throwing and delivering through it. He'll kind of tilt a little bit, and it lets air get underneath his deep ball. And what ends up happening, what we saw when he's trying to go downfield with Hall, and this is obviously important for his eval, is on just 5 of 123 third down passes went for 20 plus yards. Okay. 5 of 123. You need to be able to hit those plays on third down where, hey, you're going to have to get downfield. When you're just going in that window where you don't have to worry about him stretching the field in those circumstances, you can just flood that zone, and you can test him, just dare him. Be like, okay, let me see it. I know there's going to be air under that ball. I feel like we can probably play single high and be able to cover the whole field with a single high safety, and then just flood that zone. So that's the problem I see in the NFL level. Is like if you're not going to be able to do it on third down, again, that's one of my my little pet peeves. The muddy pocket, pressure, downfield, third down passing acumen, sack rate, that sort of stuff. That stuff like from performance metrics, I want to see how you're doing with that. And he doesn't check that box, which has me concerned.
And any quick thought on Malik Cunningham? I mean, obviously we saw Lamar at Louisville, and now I saw Cunningham in one of the All-Star games, and I thought, he's got a little bit more arm strength than I thought. He's only 6 feet, 188 pounds, but he's got mobility. He's got strength.
He's got mobility.
I see a great developmental player. He might be a CFL quarterback. I'm not really sure, but do you like anything about Cunningham?
Well, you said his wheels are what makes him different. And in 2021, he actually led all of college football in rushing touchdowns. And coming into the 2022 season, Malik Cunningham was a consensus top 5 CFF QB. So like there was a lot of excitement around what he could do. And let's face it, I mean, he took over for Lamar Jackson. He is the next. It went Lamar, and then it was a direct cut to Malik Cunningham. But, some of the issues you saw him have during the season is, one, health. He runs a lot. With running QBs, you put yourself in harm's way. And like you said, at sub 190, at 6 foot, you're going to be running a lot. He took some shots, and it led to Brandon Doman starting quite a few games for Louisville this year. So that's something, certainly it's a concern. But a bigger issue with me was I didn't have a lot of shares of him this season in my leagues because of the very fact that he's a run-only guy. And I don't like run-first QBs who cannot consistently deliver passing, who cannot throw the ball consistently into passing windows to the level of a decent quarterback. Like, he just doesn't have that ability to hit guys and he just doesn't have it. I'm sorry. It's just, he is a gadget guy. I could see him doing like a Brad Smith who was a former quarterback for Missouri.
Yeah.
Where you kind of, you get him in like a jet sweep and he goes around and he's throwing it instead of that. Or, short yardage situations where is he going to run? Is he going to throw? Like, I could see in a gadget capacity, but there's no way I can see Malik Cunningham being an NFL quarterback. I like the idea you came up with. CFL, the amount of space they have in the flats,
wide field.
CFL. Well, now you're talking, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now that is a format that I think plays to his strengths, but he doesn't have the passing acumen to be an NFL quarterback in my estimation.
Last one, your line on Clayton Tune, final line. He says, I think Tune could be a late round selection who could eventually surprise a la Brock Purdy.
Brock Purdy. He's my Brock Purdy in 2022.
Yeah. I think if there's anything that I'm taking away from this is that we both like Clayton Tune, and maybe on day 3, that could be a guy who could be added to the quarterback room for the 49ers. What's your off season? What's the rest of your draft season look like? If people want to check you out, if they're seeing you here for the first time, where can they find your stuff? And are you going to be in Indy for the Combine? Yeah,
I leave at 6:15 tomorrow morning. As of our recording, Monday morning, I'll be on a plane at 6:15 a.m. heading out. I'll be on. Chris Sims and Mike Florio will be running their show from the desk on Tuesday and Wednesday, the NBC desk inside the Combine in the interview room. And after they're done, myself, Connor Rogers from PFF and NBC Sports will be going on and talking about some of our favorite players, just going for about a half hour, doing a live preview of the night's events, as well as talking about whatever happened the night before and talking about our favorite players. So I will be at the Combine. I'll be broadcasting live all week long, talking about what is happening. And I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you there and checking it out. Much appreciated.
Hey, Eric, awesome stuff, man. I loved reading your breakdowns, and I'm sorry I'm not 100% today, but hopefully we can get you back maybe after the Combine and get your thoughts. Niners are obviously looking for an offensive tackle, a defensive tackle, a couple defensive backs, and obviously this quarterback. So today was great to talk quarterbacks with you, but we'd love to have you back in a few weeks and bend your ear on some of the other top prospects. But thanks for giving us your time today. He's a great follow on Twitter, everybody, at CF Froton, at CFFROTON. Eric, I'll give you the final word. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much. Be on the lookout. I'll be releasing on RotoWorld /NBC Sports Edge /NBC Sports my running backs rankings pre-Combine. Again, that'll be out today. I already have it written. I'm just going to be posting it as soon as I get off here. So that'll be out. And then I will also have my wide receiver tight end rankings later on in the week as the Combine develops before they go and hit the testing. They'll be out there on Sunday, so we got time for them. I go through the top options at running back who I feel There's obviously Bijan Robinson's the number one, but then, hey, we got a whole list of guys that could be number two. I go through about 6 of them pretty in depth. I'll be doing the same sort of thing with my wide receivers, and just be on the lookout for my pre-combine rankings. They'll be sure to change, but it's always good to have a baseline heading in.
No question. 2 guys that I love, and I just saw this weekend for the first time. Dejon Johnson, a defensive end from Toledo. He's like 6'2", about 270. He's kind of an undersized interior rusher, but man, he was unblockable in the East-West practices. And then I watched the HBCU All-Star game, and there's a kid who played linebacker this year for Albany State named Stephon Pierre, who wore number 30. You got to see this guy. He's 6'2", about 205, 210, but he runs 4.5. He was the conference player of the year. He was the defensive player of the year in the conference. This guy is just, unbelievable. So I'm glad they're doing that game now, because the HBCU prospects don't get enough. They don't get invited to the combine. They get overlooked a ton. Remember that name, Stephen Pierre from Albany State. Two guys that you got to check out.
I will. And I, believe it or not, I've actually already watched some Albany State tape. Unfortunately, it was the other side of the ball, where I have Todd Sibley, former Pittsburgh Panther running back, who transferred over to Albany and was their running back there, 5'8", 224, like a little kind of built like Mayan Williams from Ohio State, a little plug it like his broken tackle rate was absolutely ridiculous this year. Like he just couldn't be tackled at that level. So I do think that he could possibly find a short yardage, carve out a role there at the next level. But now I know I have someone else to watch, Mr. Pierre. So good. I'll have to go back to my Albany tape.
He was a key cog in the dirty blue defense. That's what they call it, the dirty blue defense.
I love it.
Hey, Eric, great stuff, man. We'll let you go, but it was really a pleasure meeting you. Loved reading your stuff. We wish you nothing but success, and we'd love to have you back in a few weeks and chop it up. Thanks again for coming on the Krueg Show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry. Have a good one, brother.
All right. Eric Froton from NBC. Awesome. He was absolutely awesome. All right, this is what we're going to do. We'll take a break real quick. I'll come back. We're going to play a couple spots, and then I'll be back with a couple final thoughts after this. But first, we got to tell you, check out Pig in a Pickle. They're in Corte Madera. They're in Emeryville. They're open 7 days a week in Marin County. They're open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. The barbecue is amazing. I love the brisket. The ribs, the chicken, the house-made sausages, the brisket chili. It's all incredible. Once again, they're in Corte Madera, open 7 days a week. They open at 11 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. And they're open in the Emeryville Public Marketplace Wednesday through Sunday. And now here's another word or a little bit of a video about Pig in a Pickle. Also, big thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics for being a sponsor of today's show. And here's a word from Telmetrics. Also, special thanks to a sponsor of today's show, New York Style Italian Sausage. Phenomenal product. I love New York Style Italian sausage. Often imitated, never equaled.
So New York Style Sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never going to deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
Larry Krueger here for... All right, welcome back to the Krueg Show. Hope you enjoyed Eric Froton. Hope you enjoyed some NFL draft talk. We talked about the quarterbacks today. I like Clayton Tune. I really do. And he does as well. University of Houston. Go YouTube this kid. He's got great arm strength. He's got great foot speed. He's probably going to be there in the middle of the draft. He's if you watch him, he's well put together. He's athletic. I think it would be a great combination of Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, Clayton Tune in the Niner quarterback room. I think that would be my choice. I also love Jay Kaner from Fresno State. So, day 3 of the draft, day 1, it's going to be Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. Those guys are all going in round 1. I think there's a chance they all go in the top 15. I think Richardson might be overdrafted based on his traits. And then Hendon Hooker, I think, is probably a 2nd-round pick. I think Tanner McKee is probably a 3rd-round pick. I think Jaron Hall is probably a 3rd-round pick. And then where the Niners pick at the very end of the 3rd round, they're going to be staring at Jake Haener, Max Duggan from TCU, Clayton Tune out of Houston, Stetson Bennett out of Georgia, Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA, Aiden O'Connell from Purdue. I think all those guys are going to be there. And if I had my choice, I'd probably go Clayton Tune. I really like what I've seen out of Clayton Tune. I also like what I've seen out of Jake Haener. Haener's a little bit more of a gamer, but I think Tune might even be a better pro. So there you go. I like Clayton Tune. Eric likes Clayton Tune. We'll do some more stuff with Eric in the weeks ahead so that we can, give you guys a good preview of the draft, and we'll have other draft prognosticators on as well. I am going to do a couple videos later today on the channel on a couple of NFL draft prospects that I like. I kind of teased it there at the end with Eric. But thanks to Eric, thanks to all of you. We should mention that we are closing in on 15,000 subs. So we are at 14,552. So if you're in the chat, you've yet to sub, please hit like and subscribe. And that helps the channel and will grow the channel as well. So hope you guys have a great rest of your Sunday. And hopefully I'll get this voice back because I'm sitting in tomorrow on 95.7 The Game with the great Damon Bruce. So check me out tomorrow on 95.7 The Game at 3 o'clock with Ray Ratto if I can get this voice up to speed. Until then, we're out.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah.